Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. In a minute, I will introduce today's host. But before I do, just a few quick announcements. We will be answering your questions at the end of today's discussion. So please use the panel and enter any questions you have during the discussion. We'll also send a recording to everyone who has registered for the event. So just watch for your email. The host for today's webinar is CoreALM President Steve Oken. Steve led his first SAP transformation in 2005. Since then, he's been a business transformation leader for some of SAP's biggest customers. Steve, welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Anda, and thanks everyone for joining the webinar today. Before we get started, and in case you're new to CoreALM, I'm just going to give you a quick overview on who we are. So I will share my screen. CoreALM was started about 13 years ago when our CEO and founder, Labanat Batucci, left his position as the ALM practice lead at SAP to start CoreALM. And he did that because he saw a gap in the marketplace where there wasn't any service providers that were focused on application lifecycle management solutions specifically for SAP. He had a lot of customers at SAP who had needs that weren't easy to service and decided to start CoreALM. It was about 2018 when he recognized that there was a common theme for a lot of those customers. Many of them were using SAP, of course, as their primary application or central application. But of course, those large companies had other applications that they needed to support. And for those other applications, they used other tools like Jira, Azure DevOps, and ServiceNow, the topic for today. And so decided that it was time to pivot the company and focus on building some software to enhance our ability to serve customers using application lifecycle management tools that come from SAP, such as Solution Manager, that includes Focus Build, Charm, Focused Insights, ITSM, as well as CloudALM, which is new on the scene, SAP's cloud-based offering. And so now we offer those services as well. We have served some of SAP's largest customers. We've been doing this for quite a long time. They've been running, with very good results in their production environments, and so the system has been evolved and has stabilized. We cover all aspects of the application lifecycle management process. This is a summary chart that kind of indicates we cover planning, activities, the actual building if you're in an implementation mode. Testing for integration testing, user acceptance testing, including test automation, release management, and then monitoring after the fact. So all the way from your development, your implementation side, as well as operations, whether you're using SAP Solution Manager, CloudALM, or even if you have none of those applications, we can help you. We also integrate with applications such as Jira, Azure DevOps, and ServiceNow, as I mentioned. And then we provide services for Signavio as well as Tricentis. So it gives you a really full coverage on your application lifecycle management practice. Here's a quick view of all of the different solutions, kind of broken down by implementation operations. It covers Solution Manager on the left, CloudALM on the middle, and we're excited to announce recently that we have direct transport management as well, meaning that you can control SAP transports directly from Jira, Azure DevOps, and ServiceNow. We also have services on the continuous test automation side. So that's what I wanted to share with you in a nutshell. But that's just a little bit of background on us. At this stage, our topic for today is SAP change and release management using ServiceNow. So first, why is that topic so relevant today? Because we have a lot of companies asking us about these features. Many companies use ServiceNow to manage all of their application changes, but to control changes in SAP, most companies are using SAP Charm because, of course, you need to manage transports. It's not just about dealing with the change from a paper perspective. So today, you're going to learn how to connect ServiceNow and Charm with a configurable two-way interface that'll keep both of those tools in sync. I'd love to hear more about why you decided to join today's webinar, so please put your questions in the chat. But to help us with today's topic, I'm gonna introduce two guests today. My first guest is Doug Kreinharder, and Doug has been a client partner at CoreALM. He started working originally with SAP in 2008, and he's been helping clients solve SAP problems for almost 20 years. Half of that time at CoreALM, and he's helped countless clients while he's been here, including Costco, Adidas, Lockheed Martin, and Abbott. Doug, welcome to the webinar.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
All right, great. So there's three main goals that you need to have in your mind when you're setting up a change and release management process, and we're going to cover all three of these today. So the first goal is delivering business value. Of course, the whole reason why you have a change management process is to ensure that the changes that you're introducing are adding value for the business. Of course, sometimes it's just a technical upgrade. We'll talk about that a little bit, but delivering business value is the number one objective. Number two is, of course, you want to be able to do this on a regular basis, constantly introducing new functionality, but you want to minimize the risk and any disruptions that come from introducing a change that actually causes a problem in production. So number two is minimizing risk and disruptions. Number three, of course, you have to make sure that you're complying with, if you're a regulated industry and you need to have a validated process, then you need to have compliance and you need to have accountability. But in all cases, you need compliance and accountability to ensure that there's a record of why all the changes were made, to make sure that all the steps that were necessary were done properly, and then to have a track of that so that your internal and external auditors have a view to everything that's going on. So let's go through those topics one at a time, and we can see how ServiceNow, the connector for CHARM, can achieve all of those goals. The first one, delivering business value. Doug, how does the ServiceNow connector for SAP CHARM help with delivering business value?
Yeah, Steve, so thanks so much for having me today. I appreciate it. Yeah, from a business value standpoint, I think it's one of the things that you hear at CoreALM we concentrate on is business value. Oftentimes, SAP customers are focused on just handling changes, but those changes occur to bring back business value into the organization. So SAP, we need to make sure that we're always doing those changes, but we also, in that change process, need to always loop back and make sure the changes that we're creating actually deliver the business value we're looking for. So with that, obviously, you need specialized skill sets. You need a way to prioritize each change, because some change are higher priority than others. And then also, it's really important across the organization from a DevOps strategy is visibility. That's one of the things that we see with SAP and compare with these tools like Azure DevOps and Jira and ServiceNow, is that CIOs and business leaders and stakeholders can see and have visibility into non-SAP systems, but it's very difficult sometimes for them to get visibility into the SAP system. And our connector allows them to use those same tools, in this case, ServiceNow, to view all the changes that are going on in their SAP environment.
Exactly, so that's great. And I agree on the prioritization. That was one of the first things that you said. Of course, companies deal with different types of changes. Typically, there's three main change types. We hear about normal changes, standard changes, and emergency or urgent changes. So for those that aren't familiar, normal changes are the kind of the ones that you tend to make to improve your overall process, business improvements, delivering business value. And those ones always have some potential impacts of on downstream systems, as well as the impact of within SAP as well. So those are the ones that we really probably want to focus on prioritizing, so that we can mitigate the risks and impacts. But there's also standard changes. Standard changes are usually updates to your operational processes. Your operational team, or usually IT, takes care of those, and it's usually part of a regular maintenance process. Those are generally lower risk changes, so they may not have as many restrictions on the flow. And then you have urgent or emergency changes, different ways to describe them, but those are the ones that are there to fix a problem that you're having in production right now, maybe preventing your business from being able to move forward. And so you skip, again, some of those steps to get those types of changes approved. So what I wonder is, for the connector, before I get into prioritizing, do I have to have the same workflow, or can I have a different customized workflow for each of those different change types?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So each change type can have its own workflow, and the thing is, and that's both on the ServiceNow side as well as the Charm side. So basically, with our connector, we can connect it to any existing ServiceNow system and any existing Charm system. So you don't need to reconfigure anything. You can just use it as is. But with that, we can configure as many team types as you'd like. The standard are the three that you pointed out, the normal, standard, and emergency change types. So those are common, and is usually what most customers go with. But basically, the nice thing is that you have the integration, like I was mentioning before. The ServiceNow tool becomes a system for record. So it becomes the system for reporting, a system for audit. And it's a system that everybody can go to and find any of the related information on any SAP change.
Okay, that's great, because I think that's what most people have kind of standardized. Is a lot of companies have just standardized on putting all changes through ServiceNow, and they've done really well in that space. So that way you can have a consistent process for SAP, non-SAP. So when you're using the connector, do you have to always create the tickets inside of ServiceNow first? Can you do it inside of Charm? Like, how does that work? Is it the customer's choice? How does that work?
Yeah, customer's choice. Our tool, fortunately, has been around for a number of years, so we have a lot of flexibility built into the tool. You can start either in Charm or in ServiceNow. Most customers, if they're new to ServiceNow or been using ServiceNow for a while, usually start in ServiceNow, but we do have a lot of customers that are using Charm forever, and they just wanted to continue using Charm like they have, but be able to do the reporting through ServiceNow as a system of record. So either which way, we've done it both. We've also integrated not only ServiceNow into Charm, but ServiceNow with Azure DevOps and other things that get very complicated. So we have a lot of history of knowing what to do and a lot of experience with delivering these systems. And the other thing too is that you can realize and feel comfortable with that the data between the two systems will always be in sync, that any changes that are occurring in Charm will be updated in ServiceNow.
That's awesome. So I guess not all of, in that case, if you're doing everything from ServiceNow, or whether you're using Charm as the initiator for SAP tickets, not all of the change requests that you're going to have inside of ServiceNow are requiring a corresponding change in SAP. So, how do I indicate that? Is like, how do I know which changes, and then what's the impact on ServiceNow for the non-SAP changes?
Yeah, so what happens is just to kind of give you a little history here. So the application resides within Solution Manager. So there's very few changes that are required to the ServiceNow side. On the ServiceNow side, there is a flag that you set, and you'll be able to see that today in the demo. So if it's an SAP, you just turn the flag on and it identifies it as an SAP change. In that case, the SAP change will be tied to Charm, and otherwise there's no other change to the ServiceNow process flow that's currently in place. You don't have to change anything there at all.
Okay, that's great. So, and I think that's one of the things that we hear from customers, right, is that they don't want to impact their non-SAP change process, or whatever the change process is that they have today. So this makes it easier that it only affects those SAP changes, and it's just a little checkbox, and then you get the additional information, which I guess we'll see in the demo. So I'm excited about that. So to ensure that you're always delivering business value, like once the change gets prioritized, I guess, is it automatically visible to the SAP team? And I guess somebody has to come in, they have to do their configuration or development. In order to make that change, I guess the SAP team needs to eventually open a transport to deal with that change. So is that transport then visible within ServiceNow as well?
Yeah, you'll see that. So you'll see all the transports being available in the system. You'll see that as part of the demo. When a transport's created, it's automatically visible in ServiceNow and can be selected for any change that you're putting through. All the data between the two systems is obviously kept in sync with ServiceNow being this more or less, our goal is always have it be the system of record and the system of reporting, but any information that's either in Charm or ServiceNow would be replicated in both systems. So users have, business users always have visibility to the most recent updates.
Okay, that's awesome. And so I guess we talked earlier about delivering business value. That's kind of what we're focused on right now. So
Absolutely.
prioritizing the right change is the first step, but then also, I guess, the speed of delivery is improved with the automation. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's a big thing. So basically what we're trying to do is automate that process as much as possible. Without the connector, there's a lot of back and forth between two screens. With the connector, we can really drive throughput. And so the thing is to maximize the efficiency of those changes and then also be able to drive more changes through the systems. So business users, they can provide requirements directly to developers. They can provide test cases and review test results and approve changes. And they can do all that within ServiceNow. On the SAP side, I'm familiar with Charm already. So it's just a matter of that streamlining and not having to wait for feedback from the business users to keep this process moving forward.
That's great. It's almost like a real DevOps type situation.
It is. I mean, it's the same thing I applied for the non-SAP, right? So if you're familiar with using ServiceNow for non-SAP, same type of thing.
That's fantastic. So I guess that covers kind of the delivery of business value. We talked about prioritization, the collaboration, and the automation to actually speed up the cycle. So of course, it's great to go faster, but when you go faster, that's sometimes when you make mistakes. So how do we make sure that we can go faster without introducing new risks, increase the speed of innovation without causing defects and outages?
Yeah, so obviously the system, we're going to drive a more efficient relationship. So if you think about it now, is if you have a ServiceNow system and a Charm system that aren't connected, there's a lot of back and forth between the two and a lot of potential for errors and latency and all sorts of things that occur. So with the tool set and with the connector, you get this tighter collaboration between both the business and the technical teams. The requirements come in clearer, they come in quicker, right? There's no delay because it's the direct connector. Better test cases, cleaner code, and visibility into the process, right? The process is tight so that no steps are missed, right? So we can, when we actually build out, we're going to take the best capabilities of ServiceNow and team that with the best capabilities of Charm, regardless of the configuration of each. And so we make sure that there's no steps missed, that you're following an integrated process of flow, if you will. And then in the end, all the data is in one place. And so, once again, from a reporting standpoint and audit standpoint, you don't have to go searching around. It's all in one place where you can find it easily.
And that's it. So we're stepping up quality. I guess we're still maintaining multiple levels of approval while going faster. So I guess that's the goal. So can you talk a little bit more about how we ensure compliance and accountability in that case?
Yeah, so the big thing here is, like I said, normally our goal is to have ServiceNow be the system of record. So all the everything that's done in the two systems is captured and tracked in ServiceNow. The reason we do that, like I said, is one, for reporting. So reporting out to all the users or stakeholders. We see a lot of big need right now for the CIO wanting to get insight into all the changes that are happening in the SAP side without looking at a separate screen. You can go to ServiceNow and see everything there. The other thing too is that from an audit perspective, right? We want to be able to use the same audit process that internal or external auditors would use for non-SAP for SAP. So all the documents are loaded into their system for reference in ServiceNow. The business users, they can link documents in ServiceNow. The developers can share their screenshots and test results, and every status that happens in terms of any update will be marked with a record of date and time and name.
Perfect. So I guess in that case, when the auditor goes to do their work, they only have to go to one system. So that's going to save time and improve the quality of the audit as well.
Yeah, and that's a big challenge for a lot of really well-run SAP teams that they have to deal always with this audit. the auditors are trying to come up with ways to justify themselves. And so moving the audit to ServiceNow streamlines the process. It's a huge value proposition in the end, not only from the reporting, but streamlining the audit, because now they can audit SAP just like they would any other tool in the landscape.
That's awesome. So, Doug, I think you've walked us through all 3 steps. So let's just summarize. We talked about delivering business value. We talked about minimizing risks and disruptions. We talked about ensuring compliance and accountability. So I'd love to hear from our audience. What questions do you have for our panel today? We've got some that have already come through. We're going to get to those in just a minute. Please enter your questions now. But of course, we're going to go to a live demonstration. And for that demonstration, I want to introduce our second guest today, Sajith Kanath. Sajith, welcome. Sajith is an SAP ALM architect. He leads our CoreALM offshore product development team in India. Before joining CoreALM in 2017, Sajith spent about 9 years as an SAP basis consultant at Infosys, Capgemini, and Accenture, to name a few. And he's installed CoreALM products at some of SAP's biggest customers, including Bayer, Kyndryl, QVC, and others. Sajith, welcome.
Thanks, Chief. I'm happy to be here.
All right. So, Sajith, when a customer buys the products, I guess we help them get set up. But I understand there's an administrative dashboard that they can use afterwards to update and maintain their configuration. And it looks like you got that up on the screen. So can you walk us through how that demonstration works, or how that dashboard works?
Yep, sure, Steve. So as you can already see in the screen, so when we provide the connector, it comes up with the Fury application, which can be used as the central point or control point, where you can define the connectivity from Solution Manager to ServiceNow. So this is an RFC connection to our ServiceNow demo instance. So you should be able to do the connection check from Solution Manager to ServiceNow. We also have a mapping page wherein you can maintain the mapping between the ServiceNow change types. Like you previously mentioned, we have mainly 3 types of change in out-of-the-box ServiceNow: emergency, normal, and standard change. So you can map each ServiceNow change to the corresponding charm transaction type. So here we have mapped emergency change in ServiceNow against urgent change type of charm transaction on SAP side, and normal against normal change type, and standard change against standard change document on the Solution Manager charm side. So once you define the mapping, you can further get into additional details of the mapping, wherein you define which is going to be the initiating system, what should be the workflow of the integration, and which all fields need to be mapped. So as you can see in here, for this particular emergency change on ServiceNow, which we mapped against SMHF transaction type in charm. So if you see, the initiating system here is maintained as ServiceNow. So on the left side, you can see the ServiceNow statuses. You can select the status from ServiceNow in the drop-down, and here you have the direction, which means whether the flow is from ServiceNow to SAP or SAP to ServiceNow. And here you have the charm statuses for that particular transaction type. So in this example, the creation happens in ServiceNow, which will create a corresponding change document in charm. And on the charm side, the developer will pick up the change document and will do the development. And after the development is complete, will be moved to testing. And once it is successfully tested, this change is ready for production deployment. And then it will be sent to ServiceNow for the CAB approval, which means the ServiceNow change will be automatically moved to authorized status by the connector. And once it is authorized and approved by the CAB, from the ServiceNow, we can move it to implement, which will authorize the change document to production deployment. So which will set the charm status to authorize for production. And on the charm side, once it is imported into production status, it will be setting the ServiceNow to review. Here you can also see a lock option. So once you make a status change from charm to ServiceNow, you can lock the change document in charm for further status update, so that it should only be coming from ServiceNow instead of someone manually overriding the status update and resulting the tool in not in synchronization. So to ensure that both the tools are in sync by statuses, we also have the log status option. And further, we have mapping of the fields in ServiceNow and in charm. So here we mapped all the standard fields And you also have the option to map custom fields in ServiceNow if you have any. And this is just a sample workflow based on your requirement. And if you have a custom workflow, you can have the mapping between any status in ServiceNow to any status in CHARM. And this also does not impact your workflow. It will just adapt your, if you have a custom workflow, it will adapt to it. Similarly, we have the mapping for normal change, which is again a similar mapping, and for standard change as well. So here the only difference is that previously we have seen ServiceNow as the initiating system, but in here we are showing CHARM as the initiating system, which means once the change document is created in Solution Manager, and when it is moved to be tested status, it is going to create a ServiceNow change. And when the ServiceNow change after move to implement will set the CHARM status to successfully tested. Again, this is just a sample workflow to show the connector's capability. Your workflow statuses could be entirely different, but the connector can well adapt to it as well. And this is on the Solution Manager side. You have also, so there are also other tabs like reporting, system preparation, and so on in the Fiori page. And this is on the Solution Manager side. While on the ServiceNow side, we also have a configuration option. Once you deploy the connector using our plugin, which can be downloaded from the ServiceNow store, it is approved and certified by ServiceNow. You have a property section wherein you can maintain the connectivity from ServiceNow to Solution Manager. So you need to maintain the Solution Manager endpoint URL, and you need to maintain the credentials for the integration user, and rest all the values will be automatically populated once you maintain the mapping in Solution Manager. So here also we have an option to do the connection test as well. So once you click on this, this will try to establish connection from ServiceNow to SAP through the mid server. And if the connection test is successful, you can see the message on top. So this on a high level about how you do the configuration and what all the tools that we have available with the connector.
It looks really user-friendly. So do we have customers that are kind of maintaining this on their own once we do the initial setup?
Yes, they should be able to. So after the connector is deployed, we'll also be providing with a documentation on how to do the configuration and all those. And we'll also be providing training to the customer so that they should be able to manage it themselves. And anytime they can make changes to the mapping if there is a process change in their organization.
That's awesome. All right, so why don't you walk us through how a typical change cycle would work and how the information between both systems is synchronized?
Absolutely. So for example, let's take up this emergency change request, which is mapped against the urgent change transaction type on SAP. So as per the mapping you see here, the initiating system is ServiceNow. So let's go to ServiceNow and create emergency change request. I'm clicking on view. You have the options to select from. Let me create an emergency change, for example. Filling in the mandatory details. Just fill in the short description. And if you remember, this is the field which Doug mentioned about, which will distinguish SAP and non-SAP changes. So if you set this value to no, this is going to be considered as a non-SAP change request, and this will follow the standard ServiceNow workflow. And if you want to have this integrated with SAP Solution Manager, which means if you want to have a corresponding change document created in CHARM, you need to set this value to yes. And after which you can see there is a additional tab appearing in here called SAP CHARM details. So this tab is so where you can see all the details of the change document related to this particular change request in ServiceNow. So here you can, for the creation of a change document, you need to maintain the change cycle. So you can look up the change cycle from this list. I'm just going to create a change document using the weekly release, and the corresponding system ID or configuration item is automatically populated. We'll also select the mandatory fields like assignment group, and we have, if you see in the mapping, we have additional fields mapped, for example, justification against reason for change, plan start date and plan end date, and so on. So let me just select those field values as well. I'll select plan start date as tomorrow and planned end date as 27th. Just change the timestamp here. Justification, I'll just mention as. Now we have all the fields filled in. I'm going to save this change request in ServiceNow. As per the mapping, once it is saved in new status, it's going to create a change document. Let's come back over here, and if we go to the notes section, yes. So once you maintain all the values and as per the mapping, this is going to trigger a call from ServiceNow to SAP. And you can see in the notes section in here or in the work notes that SAP integration is initiated. So this will make a call to the SAP or Solution Manager system and will create a change document. And once it is created, you're going to see the change document details under this SAP Charm Details tab. So it's going to take a couple of seconds. And there we go. Here you can see the change document got created, and this is the change document ID or charm ID, and other details like change cycle, corresponding configuration item, and what is the current status of that change document in SAP. Here also you can see that change is waiting for SAP update, which means as per the mapping that we have, once the change document is created, we are locking ServiceNow status so that the next status change should be coming from Solution Manager to ServiceNow, and there should not be any manual status change on the ServiceNow side. So we have this change document. This is already hyperlinked. Once you click on this, it will take you directly to that charm request. So I'm selecting the business role. Now let's see if all the field values that we mapped are correctly populated. So here is the short description, which is webinar demo. And if we come over here, all the other details, this is the integration user that we have, and this description and the reason for change, which we mapped against justification, which shows demo change for webinar, and other field values like requested start as 26 and requested end 27, and I also maintained the timestamp, which is 10 o'clock. And here under ServiceNow integration tab, you can see the related ServiceNow change number and what is the corresponding ServiceNow change type, and the select. So you can also see the selected change cycle. All this information as per the mapping is also populated on SAP side as well. So the next step is now the change document is created, and the developer is going to pick up this change document as per the assignment. So let me, on behalf of the developer, move this to in development status and save this. So in standard charm, as is a move to in development, it will ask for a change, creating a transport request. Let me create a customization request in here. And like we mentioned previously, all the details which are visible within charm will also be visible on the ServiceNow side. So now we have this transport request created. Let's come back to ServiceNow and see if the transport details are visible under the charm details tab. Let me reload the form and see this. So here, as you can see, this is the transport details like the transport ID, corresponding charm ID, type, and all this information. And you can also see the current status of the charm request is also visible in here. Now it is in status in development. And like the transport request, if you add any additional information, like if you are going to add an attachment, if you're going to have solution documentation, testing information, all those information will also be visible under this particular SAP Charm Details tab. So now we have the transport request created, and suppose the development is complete. The next step is to release the task in SAP and move this to be tested. So what I'll do is, so I'm not going to add any object to this particular transport request. I'll just release it as an empty transport so that we can just show the workflow. Let me release the corresponding task so that I can move the change document to be tested status. We'll switch to edit mode. Task urgent change to test. So as per the standard charm workflow, this is going to move the corresponding transport request to the test environment or quality environment and import it in there. And once the import is successful, it will be moved to be tested. Now you can see it's moved to be tested status, wherein now the tester will come and will do the validation of the changes. And once it is successfully tested, as per the mapping that we have, the ServiceNow change will be set to authorize initiating CAB approvals. So let's also check what is the current status of CHARM request in ServiceNow. So the CHARM is in to be tested status, and the transport request is already released because it is already imported to the quality environment. So let's go ahead and move this to successfully tested. As per the mapping, successfully tested should set the ServiceNow change status to authorize automatically, and it should also log SAP CHARM request. So let's see if the CHARM request is getting logged. So now it's moved to successfully tested. Let's give it a try if it is actually logged. And I'm trying to override the connector and move this to ServiceNow, even though there is no CAB approval as of now. In fact, the connector should not be allowing this. So you can see it is not, the status change is not moved, and you are getting an error message, status change is waiting on ServiceNow, which means as per the connector workflow, the next status change should only be coming from ServiceNow once the ServiceNow change is moved to implement. So now let's go back to ServiceNow and see, you can already see that status has changed to authorize, and in the work notes you will also be seeing the comments that it is set by the integration user, and there's also a comment that it is updated from SAP CHARM. Let me just reload this so that we'll see what is the current status. It's in authorize and it is waiting for approval. Let's go to CHARM details. It is successfully tested, and this is the corresponding transport details. So let me approve this on behalf of the CAB approver. So as per the ServiceNow workflow, once it is approved, it will be moved to schedule, and as per the mapping, the next status is implement, which should authorize the change request to a production deployment. So let me go ahead and set this to implement and save. This again, as per the mapping, is going to make a call to SAP Solution Manager and set the CHARM status to authorize for production. And once it is changed, you should also be seeing that particular status change on ServiceNow side. So you can see it's already moved to authorize for production status, and this is now waiting for SAP update. And in the mapping, once it is set to implement, we are locking the ServiceNow status so that the next status change should be coming from CHARM once it is imported into production. Like we have seen on SAP side, if I try to move this to review status manually and save this, the connector should not be allowing it. As you can see, it says invalid update and it is waiting update from SAP. So if I reload the form, you should still be seeing it in implement status. So the next step is to deploy this into the production environment. Here, and import this into production environment and save. Okay, now the change is imported into production, and as per the mapping, imported into production should set the ServiceNow change to review status so that the user can review the changes. You can see it's already changed to review, and it's updated from CHARM. And the CHARM status is imported into production here. So now the user will validate the changes and we'll set this to close status, and we'll put the closure comments. And save. So now the change is closed, and that completes the workflow. And if you want to have an additional mapping against closed, if you have a status, for example, confirmed or completed on the CHARM side, you can have additional mapping as well against closed. And
that's really impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That walks through the whole process from end to end, at least for an emergency change. And in this particular case, you did it all from one user account but I guess it would follow the normal segregation of duties. So if you have roles set up that allow, because usually you wouldn't want the same person to create a transport and release it and import it. So I guess it would be restricted based on role. Is that right?
That's exactly, yes, that's right, Steve. So as I have admin privileges in both the systems, I was just impersonating the corresponding roles, but it will actually follow the segregation of duties as per the process flow that you currently have in your organization.
It's amazing, and I loved how every time you completed one of the steps, you could see all the information in real time. You had all the history. You could see your name against it, the date, and all of that was available inside of ServiceNow, as Doug promised. So, Anda, I guess I think I've seen a few questions come through. And if you are watching this live and you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll take them now. So, Anda, what questions do we have for our panel?
Yes, Steve, it does look like we have a couple. The first one here is, how does the tool get installed?
I'll hand that over to you, Sajid. How do we do the setup for this tool?
Yeah, so for this tool, there are actually two steps. One is, as I mentioned previously, we have our plugin, which needs to be deployed on the ServiceNow side. It's already certified and approved by ServiceNow, and you should be able to download it from the ServiceNow store, which needs to be deployed in your ServiceNow instance. And we now even support our latest ServiceNow version, Washington, DC. And once you do the deployment on the ServiceNow, we'll also be providing an external transport in CoreALM namespace, which needs to be deployed into your solution manager environment. And there is no middleware or any third-party system in between, no CoreALM system in between. The integration happens directly between your ServiceNow instance and your solution manager system. And the deployment steps are quite easy. So you just need to have this deployment done on both systems. And after that, there are a few configuration steps as per the configuration guide that you would be providing. And ideally, we should be able to complete this, the entire deployment and configuration in a couple of weeks.
Awesome, that's really good. On to what other questions do we have?
Okay, typically how long does something like this take?
And Sajid, I think you just answered that, right? So you said it takes a couple of weeks. How do you break down that time frame?
So mainly what we have seen is, so if we have everything, all the prerequisites met, provided your ServiceNow is running up and running, you already know what is the to-be workflow for the integration. And if you already have the mid-server setup and the connectivity is already established between ServiceNow and Solution Manager, we can even complete this end-to-end configuration in a couple of days as such, provided we have all the authorization and access to your environment. But no, ideally, as I mentioned, it should not take more than a week. But as we are going to do this deployment in the non-production environment or dev environment, we need to do all the validation and testing. So it can take end-to-end 3 to 4 weeks to go live with this tool.
And that gives every company time to get everybody familiar with the system, learn the process, do your testing, user acceptance in dev, then move it to production. Maybe it's not called development, but you have like a non-productive instance of Solution Manager. You do it there first, and then you move to production, and then everybody can get trained up, and you're good to go. So that's why it takes time, but it's really only a couple of days. Okay, got it. Great. What other questions do we have, Anda?
The next one is, how do ServiceNow and Charm talk to each other?
Okay,
that's a good one, Sajid.
So from ServiceNow to Solution Manager, as ServiceNow is in the cloud or in the internet, and Solution Manager mostly will be on-premise. ServiceNow is already providing the mid-server, which is a connectivity tool by ServiceNow for on-premise connectivity. The connection from ServiceNow to Solution Manager is through the mid-server, and from Solution Manager to ServiceNow, it can be a direct connection or through a proxy. So if your Solution Manager is already having a connectivity to the internet, so it can directly access ServiceNow, or it can be through a proxy or a web dispatcher.
Okay, great. That sounds pretty straightforward because that's already part of what most people have when they install ServiceNow in the first place. Okay. Any other questions, Anda?
Yes, looks like we have one more question. It says, I have custom fields and statuses. Would that still work?
That's a good
Yes.
one.
Well, as I showed previously in the configuration, we have the option to do the field mapping. So though we are showing only the standard fields here, you also have the option to map the custom fields as well. So those will be available in the drop down as we see here, both on Charm side and also on the solution manager side. So it will also support custom fields mapping on both systems.
That's great. And it looks like you have the opportunity to say which direction is the flow happening.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So custom fields, custom statuses, it doesn't matter how much they've gone off the standard path, I guess. Is that the idea?
That's correct, Steve. And customs change types too. So other than emergency, normal, and standard, you can also, if you have a custom change type on ServiceNow or on Charm, that is also supported. And we also have the option to map multiple mappings. For example, against emergency change, you can map multiple Charm transaction types. So one to many mapping is also possible.
Okay, that's interesting. That's great. So I guess that's how we make it flexible and easy for customers to use this without having to change their existing change process. All we're really doing is automating. In the past, I've talked to many customers, and they say they're doing manual duplication. So one person will enter the information in ServiceNow, and then they'll have to go into SAP and do corresponding changes and documentation in Charm. But that approach means that you don't always end up with the accurate information in both systems, and you don't have that sort of speed that we were kind of going for. I want to thank both of our presenters. I think this has been a great walkthrough. I think we've understood how we can deliver increased business value, improve that speed of delivery for your maintenance and project releases, minimizing risks and disruptions even while going faster, and ensuring compliance and accountability. I want to thank you all for joining. Thanks for your questions and engaging with us. Of course, if you have a question for us that you'd like to discuss after this, or if you're watching on a recorded version of this webinar and you want to reach out to us, you can go to our website, CoreALM.com, and you can just click the Talk to an Expert button in the top right corner of your screen. Thanks very much. We hope to hear from you, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.